let's get to the dailies, find out exactly what the dailies are saying today. We're going to be joined in the program by one of our regular analysts, Ms. Akintobi Dayo, public affairs analyst, joining us virtually. Ms. Akintobi, thank you so much for coming on the program, all the way from the United Kingdom.
Good to be here.
Thank you. Okay, so let's get straight to what dailies are saying. I'm spoiled for choice. Perhaps I will start with the Guardian newspaper. Guardian. I think Guardian is the first place to start. Let's start with the Guardian. The man Buhari, life, legacy, controversies, 12 million votes left behind. That's the big story on the front page of the Guardian newspaper, page 4 and 5. So, Ms. Akintobi, this clearly speaks to the fact that most legacies may be enmeshed in controversy depending on who is looking from where. What do you make of it?
Without a doubt. I mean, there's no leader ever in the history of humankind who got it all right or got it all wrong. So at the end of the day, history is what judges in terms of legacy. And I don't think you can avoid a section of the populace looking at any leader as leaving behind certain controversies. I think in the case of Muhammadu Buhari, there's a huge swath of Nigeria who respects him, thinks he did well for the country, thinks that his simplicity, his penchant for discipline, and his anti-corruption stance were all very good things. And that in terms of his performance, that he didn't do too badly, or at least he didn't do, he wasn't the worst we've ever seen in terms of leadership. Then there's the other side of the coin, especially among the young in Nigeria. If you've been following Twitter Street and TikTok in the days after his demise, there are some who thinks he's the worst thing that ever happened to Nigeria, and that things like the NSARS protest and its outcome, and the banning of Twitter in Nigeria, and some other authoritarian-looking things that happened during his tenure, that those are things that make his rule ignominious for us as a people. So it just depends on what side of the fence you're sitting on, but I think what is incontrovertible is the fact that he stood for anti-corruption, he was a disciplinarian, he liked law and order, he liked orderliness. And a lot of people admire the fact that after he left office, he lived a simple life. He didn't try to interfere in government or write letters to the media advising the current administration or criticizing. He just went away into the quiet good night. He went away quietly and left the new administration to make its own way, which I think is an admirable trait. Is that he had come, he had done his bit, and he had gone, and he left it to those who came after him. I also think it's important to note that both when he was in office and after his tenure, nobody in Nigeria can say that any scandal, any financial scandal, any moral scandal, or that his character or his person was ever tainted throughout his tenure. I think those are very important things that will live after him, and that will make him continue to be revered as a Nigerian leader who came and did his bit, did his level best, as we call it, and has left a name behind, as you can see from the outpouring of adulation, the outpouring of accolades, even from the opposition. There's been a lot of good that's been said about him, and I think that counts for a lot.
That's what you find on most of the front pages. Yet again, this week has been dedicated to the late former president. Vanguard newspaper also reflects that special effects session, calls it as an expanded session. You see, Buhari's patriotism lived in deeds, not words, from President Tinubu. And you can see the photograph with his son and daughters. Well, Aisha is conspicuously missing in that picture. It got a lot of people talking as well, particularly because of certain reports trailing her relationship or otherwise with the former president. But right under that big picture, Mr. Akintobi, you see why G5 betrayed Atiku PDP in 2023 autumn. And, you know, we just joked and said, you know, people are leaving the People's Democratic Party. So how much or the quality of the people left is now a big question. So when you look at that umbrella, do you see the exit as some sort of holes in the umbrella, or does it make the umbrella stronger for you in that sense?
The umbrella has been leaking, and the leak is becoming like an avalanche that's about to swallow up the entire umbrella. It's had holes for the last several years, and I think its problem became more acute when former Vice President Atiku threw his hat in the ring to run for the presidency in 2023. If you remember, the governors had all had a gentleman's agreement that they would only present a candidate from the South, in keeping with our unwritten agreement that power would rotate between the North and the South every 8 years. And so there's a school of thought that says that after the Buhari tenure of 8 years, no way in the world should any Northern candidate have been presented from either of the two major contending parties. They saw Atiku throwing his hat in the ring as a betrayal of that agreement and understanding. So many people, even within his party, that was the beginning of the problem with the G5. And of course, they were led by Nyesom Wike. And the primary beef that they had was the fact that Atiku should never have even run in the primary because even within the PDP, among the governors, the agreement was that a Southern candidate would be put forward. Of course, there's the idea that Wike himself was self-interested. It was enlightened self-interest because he had his eyes on the PDP ticket himself. So he had a personal beef with Atiku because Atiku's ambition, well, Atiku's throwing his hat in the ring is what truncated Wike's ambition at that point in time. I'm not even sure that ambition is permanently truncated, just put on hold for now. I believe he probably will still make a run in the future, but the jury is still out on that. So with regards to the PDP, there are still some stalwarts who are staying strong. You see Autumn's statement, people like Bukola Saraki, despite recent defections. David Mark, Dele Muhammadu yesterday, number of other people. It looks like the rats are abandoning a sinking ship. That's the way it looks. It looks like any and everybody. But there is still a core, a foundational core of the promoters of the PDP who are still there. There's Sheyi Makinde, who has said he's not going anywhere. There's Nyesom Wike himself, who is a formidable power within the PDP, despite the fact that he's fraternizing with the APC and working for an APC administration. He himself is an avowed PDP stalwart and has said he's not going anywhere. So I think despite the problems of the PDP, I think you underestimate them at your own peril, because they do still have pockets of Nigeria that are still strongly pro-PDP, that can't see themselves voting any other way no matter what. So, yes, PDP is down, but it's not out. It's bowed, but it's unbeaten at this point. And if they get their act together, especially if Wike can compartmentalize his attention and focus a bit on the structure of the PDP, they can restructure themselves in a way that will make them competitive again, in spite of the ADC. ADC is a beautiful bride now. Everybody wants to associate with ADC. And everybody, even people within the APC. I saw, most shockingly, the past president, chairman of the APC, John Odige Oyegun, who a party chairman of APC, the party in power, went over to the ADC. So it goes to tell you that positioning and jockeying for 2027 is in full swing, and the APC is the one who is facing the onslaught now. The APC really needs to put its house in order and fortify its defenses. Otherwise, it's going to have a run for its money in 2027.
For those of us who are onlookers and journalists, the more the merrier. The bigger the opposition, the better for us. We just need a vibe, whether it's APC, PDP, ADC, whatever name. And Mr. Akintoye, you hit the nail on the head where you talk about self-interest. On one hand, Atiku was blamed for his obsession to be president. On the other hand, there was accusation against Nyesom Wike that if there was supposed to be justice, don't just zone it to the south, micro-zone it to the southeast. And then the issue of him willing, not being open to be vice president to the same person, whether that is true or not. Because I heard there were 3 names that were sent, and the vice president, former vice president, chose Ifeanyi Okowa. So it's just about a play out of interests, and how they manage these interests is what makes them strong or weak. Let's go to this Nigeria. Soldiers reject 13 million naira bribe from terrorists, says GHQ. Dismisses claim of Turkish terrorist group in Nigeria. Troops apprehend transport union members for conveying arms to terrorists. I think this is as loud as it can get. On one hand, I'm looking and say, oh, commendable. Soldiers, great people. They've done a lot for this country. We must commend them, because sometimes we just bash them. But it takes a lot to sign up your life to die for a country. That should be honored. That should not be disregarded. That should be respected at all times. So we thank them for their service. On the other hand, you also see why Nigeria seems to be this destination for all sorts of terrorist organizations. Whether this is true or false, for the idea that there's even a conversation or a narrative is even very disturbing, Mr. Akintoye.
Yes, indeed it is. And when you put this side by side with what happened in Plateau yesterday, it makes it all the more compelling that we have a problem. Why is Nigeria the most fertile ground, breeding ground for all sorts of terrorist organizations? We just heard of this new one that the Turkish ambassador to Nigeria in a speech yesterday mentioned this. He named the organization, I can't quite remember, FE something or the other, and he said that that is a terrorist organization that Turkey has identified and has grappled with in the past, who are now using Nigeria as a staging ground for terrorist activities. And you look at it and you wonder why. Well, of course, some members of that organization in Nigeria, some Nigerian members have debunked that assertion and said they're just a non-governmental agency who is into helping IDPs and charitable works, philanthropy, and things like that. But all terrorist organizations hide under the guise of one legitimate format or the other. What we do know is that insecurity is rife in Nigeria. A lot of it is committed by terrorist-like organizations. And what defines terrorism versus conventional warfare simply is the element of the unknown, the element of surprise, the element of deceit, the element of betrayal and treachery. And terrorism is the most difficult thing to fight, because how do you fight an unseen enemy? If we were conventional warfare, mano a mano, face to face, hand to hand, gun to gun, we know who the enemy is, and then we confront each other openly. But when you see and when you're dealing with an enemy you can't see, it complicates issues. Especially now we've got technology, we've got drones, we've got eavesdropping, we've got intelligence, we've got informants, we've got satellites that are tracking every movement of anything. It makes it all the more complicated, which is why, in terms of terrorism, it's been claimed that the best way to fight it is to follow the money, which is why you see a lot of movement towards anti-money laundering regulations in every country of the world, even in Nigeria, because terrorism can only thrive through funding. Even when we talk about even just the motorcycle terrorists who are in Sambisa forest, they need funding to be able to carry out their operations. So where is that money coming from? How is it getting to them? Right. We need to follow the money. So when you see the Nigerian army reject a bribe, 13.7 million, which probably represents several years of the salaries of the infantrymen, for them to be able to stand up and say, no, we will not take this money. Rather than that, we will fight you hand to hand and we will subdue you. I think it's highly commendable because in Nigeria of today and yesterday, our law enforcement agents, they do take bribes. They do take emoluments under the table wherever you see them on the road, in traffic, they do get settled. So for these ones to be able to stand up and say we're on a mission, we will not compromise that mission no matter what the inducement is, I think is credible, I think it's honorable. I think we also, apart from just thanking our army,
right,
which is a lot of lip service, that I think we need to go beyond that and show our appreciation by way of improving their conditions of service, paying them better, appreciating their patriotism. Like you said, Jeff, they put themselves out there, their lives on the line to defend us and keep us safe. I think we need to recognize and appreciate that a lot more than just thank you.
Certainly. So beyond that news report, what is being done to compensate them, to say thank you, and to better their lot across board in terms of welfare, even what they use in prosecuting this war? You know, the bit about the Turkish organization is a very complicated one, because you recall that when Erdogan visited in 2021 under now late President Muhammadu Buhari, he had raised that issue as well, the Fethullah organization, which was founded by Fethullah Gulen, a Turkish scholar whom the country blames for the coup, botched coup in 2016. By the way, Fethullah Gulen died 2024. And I recall at that time, there was this worry that the US, you know, other European countries do not see Fethullah Gulen or the organization as a terrorist organization or a terrorist itself. So this whole matter, I think Nigeria should steer clear of it. So now that it's coming up again, it'll be interesting to see how the Bola Tinubu government would speak to it. But as has been said, the claim has been dismissed. But let's take a look at New Telegraph as we begin to wind down, Mr. Kintobi. And it's from the organized private sector, saying $9.4 billion US foreign aid cancellation will disrupt Nigeria's key sectors. Wants additional budget allocation to health ministry. So obviously this matter is not done with just yet, and it's been raised yet again, page 3. On the flip side, you hear the American government saying that, well, because of the tariffs and all of the moves, the economy, or at least revenues, at an all-time high in that sense. I imagine you caught some of the briefing by the White House press secretary. So it looks like we have to look inwards, as has been said time and again. But how much do we have inwards, Mr. Kintobi? Where can we begin to cut from to ensure that when those aids, which are ending anyway, but finally end, we don't, we're not left in the cold in that sense?
Well, I have a theory that if we were to close all of Nigeria's borders and just lock ourselves in for a decade, that we'd emerge a more formidable entity, that we'd be able to feed ourselves, defend ourselves, produce and manufacture everything that we need, as well as export. I think dependence on aid, dependence too much on external aid and foreign aid makes you complacent. I think it makes you rest on your laurels and not begin to endeavor to achieve or to perform optimally. So perhaps this is a blessing in disguise that the cancellation of this foreign aid is coming at a time like this, because it will compel us to look inward. You say, what do we have inward that we can look to? We have any and everything, superlative. We have, first of all, human capacity. Our human capacity is second to none to any country in the rest of this world. I make bold to say that the kind of intellectual heft that exists within Nigerian minds is unparalleled anywhere in the world. So once we've got that human capacity, we follow it up with all the resources that are in our soil, all the natural mineral resources that the country has. Then we talk about things like the ability of our workers to apply themselves when we want to We're hard-working people. We do back-breaking work. You see people on the road pulling carts full of yams and sweating, and you see their muscles rippling and all of that for a measly amount of money. And you imagine that if this person had the opportunity to convert this sort of effort into meaningful economic transformation, this country would go places. And there are thousands of people like that. So when you say look inward, the $9.4 billion worth of aid that we've lost is infinitesimal. It's an infinitesimal proportion of what we can generate on our own using our God-created abilities and talents.
Mr. Dayo, to be always great and a pleasure listening to your reviews and how you look at things from your perspective. We must thank you. Thank you so much for coming on the program. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
All right, we'll take a quick break now, and when we come back, we'll get to that conversation around the politics of the PDP and what is playing out in that party. We'll be joined by a former NWC member of the party in just a moment. Stay with us.